The imposter syndrome, when it shows up in an executive setting or a corporate setting, shows up in a number of ways. And what it is, let's start by defining imposter. It is someone who has achieved high position, and inside, their private thinking, they don't feel that they really belong. They don't feel that they got there the same way their peers did, whether it comes from an educational background or prior professional experience. So that's the setup. They don't feel secure, and for some reason they don't deeply inside, they don't feel like they belong. One of the challenges that shows up here is someone who has been infected or has imposter syndrome actively working is it taps into a core emotion, fear. The fear is, I can't do my job. But the bigger fear that's hanging out there is, I'll be found out. My peers will find out, or my CEO will find out that I am an imposter and I don't belong here. So that's the setup. What happens is that fear is like a corrosive element in that person's psyche, and it shows up in low confidence, it erodes self-esteem. And the other area that it shows up that people notice is procrastination, slow decision making. Emails go into a black hole, that they feel ghosted, meaning they're not responding in an efficient way. So those are some of the symptoms that the world sees, but almost no one knows that you're thinking and feeling that, hey, I'm an imposter and I don't belong here. We tend to hide that. So a couple things happen. Once they associate with the imposter syndrome from a clinical perspective or a clinical definition, they start to feel relief. Combination of, hey, I got to talk about it and I identified why I don't feel comfortable. So now they have a structure to work with. And then when they spend time with me, now there's more back and forth conversation, and more of that pressure or the fear starts to come down just having that conversation. So what happens next? There's two kinds, and I want you to think of it as a scale, 0 to 10. 0, I have no imposter syndrome, which I would argue almost all of us have at least a 1. But some people, struggle with it, and it's a 6 or a 7 or an 8. And when it's that high, it's destabilizing. It takes them off their game. They don't do their best work. So what I'm attempting to propose here is people are low on the scale or high on the scale or somewhere in between, and I work with both. And when they're on the low end of the scale, oftentimes talking about it is a great relief. And then from there, we can create tactics, not strategies, tactics and tools to inoculate against the ill feelings or the fear feelings that come up with the imposter. Usually get a tremendous amount of headway here. Then there's the other case where someone is struggling with a more severe element or severe imposter syndrome. We're going to score that at a 6 or higher. Then there's a little more deep work to do. And I follow a more programmatic approach towards unpacking that. So that's a deeper dive. And my skill set is able to tackle both. First, we go on the low end of the scale and see what kind of results we get. And if it's pernicious and doesn't go away, then we enter and attack it from a programmatic standpoint and think of it as going through a workbook and exercises to bolster how you deal with that. So that's a few thoughts on the imposter syndrome and how it shows up. It's usually what I call a secret thing that someone has or harbors inside themselves. They may or may not have labeled it, but they're operating from a place of fear that they might get it wrong or be discovered. And the idea with executive coaching is to stop that kind of thinking that really is off-putting, and let's get the fear levels down, or the heavy emotions that are operating there. And we want to make space for their, I would say, positive emotions, buoyant emotions that help them do their job more effectively. So this is a fun one to tackle, and I get great results when we get it cleaned up, and then the executive's able to put his or her energies back into the job itself.